Gareth Hale believed solitude was something you earned, or perhaps something you paid for in blood. His payment was the entire roster of Eclipse 9. He was the sole survivor of a mission that was never logged. A supernatural massacre that had left his team as little more than bloody graffiti on the walls of a forgotten crypt. The official discharge papers called it exemplary service and honorable retirement. Gareth called it running away. He had purchased the cabin site unseen, drawn by its description, total isolation. It was nestled deep in a snow-choked forest that smothered all cell signals. There was no road, only an old logging track that vanished under the first heavy snow of the season, which had been 3 weeks ago. The cabin was his new fortress. Its defenses were a cast-iron fireplace that constantly smoked, a case of cheap whiskey that burned all the way down, and his old, well-oiled warden-issue weapons. His only companion was a glitchy, half-functional household AI named Rust, left by the previous, and likely just as desperate, owner. "Sir," Rust's synthesized voice crackled from a speaker grill above the sink. "My sensors indicate the external temperature is now -20 degrees. The integrity of the west-facing wall is, conservatively, 92% compromised by dry rot." "Log it, Rust," Gareth muttered, not looking up. He was kneeling by the hearth, meticulously cleaning the action of a rifle that could stop a charging rhinocerotide demon. Furthermore, statistical analysis of retired Black Operations personnel seeking absolute peace shows a 99% probability of... "Rust, be quiet." The AI complied, emitting a small static pop of annoyance. The world outside the cabin was a mess, and Gareth had paid good money to ignore it. Decades ago, the Veil Fall had ripped the sutures between the mundane world and the umbral realm. The monsters in storybooks had walked out of the pages and onto the evening news. Vampires, lycanthropes, witches, ancient elementals, and things that had no name, humanity, resilient and arrogant, had fought back. The wars had been bloody, global, and utterly terrifying. They ended not with a victory, but with a universal gasp for breath. The resulting Crimson Sun Accords were a masterpiece of mutual distrust. Humans and the supernatural now coexisted, bound by a treaty that was as cold and thin as the ice forming on Gareth's windows. Gareth had been a warden, an agent of the secret Eclipse Wardens, the human agency tasked with policing that fragile peace. He had been the one they sent when a rogue vampire coven needed silencing, or when a sorcerer forgot the new rules about summoning ancient horrors in downtown Chicago. He had been the sharpest tool in the box. And then, Ethelberg. He squeezed his eyes shut, the scent of gun oil and pine smoke filling his lungs. He forced the memory down, back into the dark place he kept it. He was done. He was retired. The legends of the old world and the new one blurred together. He remembered the briefings, the whispers of the time before Veilfall, the greatest of the vampire legends, the Crimson Noctuary, an empire that had supposedly ruled the shadows for millennia. It was led by a ghost, an entity known only as the Vampire Empress. She had vanished during the final days of the war, just before the Accords were signed. Some said she was assassinated by her own kind. The more paranoid, like Gareth's old commander, whispered that she had been sealed away by humans, a secret weapon held in reserve. Gareth tossed another log onto the fire. He did not care. Empress or pauper, it made no difference to him. His only ambition was to see the bottom of this whiskey bottle and wake up to a world that was, for one day, not trying to kill him. "Sir," Rust crackled again. "What? My processors have been analyzing your recent behavior patterns. Setting perimeter traps, reinforcing the door jam, constant weapons maintenance. It keeps my hands busy, Rust." Statistical analysis suggests that men who say, "I just want to be left alone," are often, paradoxically, preparing for a siege. This behavior is a 97% match for Rust, Gareth warned. A man expecting trouble. I find cognitive dissonance fascinating. Would you like me to play some soothing music? No. Gareth stood up, the rifle now gleaming. He walked to the window, rubbing a clear circle in the frost. Outside, the blizzard was a roaring, white wall. Nothing could move in this. Not man, not beast. He was safe. He was alone. He allowed himself, for the first time in 10 years, to relax. The knock came at precisely 1 minute past midnight. It was no weak, desperate tapping. It was not the frantic scrabbling of a person lost in the storm. It was a measured, rhythmic, 3-beat impact. Knock, knock, knock. A sound of absolute confidence, as if the person on the other side knew exactly who was inside and was merely informing him of their arrival. Gareth Hale did not move. He did not breathe. The retiree in him vanished. The warden took his place. His hand, steady and practiced, lifted the rifle from the rack. His other hand went to the warden-issue sidearm, holstered at the small of his back. "Rust," he whispered. "Sensors." "There is nothing." "Sir, the blizzard is scrambling all external audio and visuals." "Wait. I am detecting a thermal anomaly at the front door. It is humanoid, but the temperature output is conflicting. It is both freezing cold and burning." "Stay quiet," Gareth ordered. He moved silently across the wooden floor, his boots making no sound. He stood beside the door, rifle pointed at the reinforced wood. Knock, knock, knock. Louder this time, more insistent, a demand. Gareth took a breath, held it, and unlatched the deadbolt. He kicked the door open with his boot, using the heavy oak as a shield while he swept the porch with the barrel of his rifle. The blizzard howled, a vortex of ice and snow blasting into the warm cabin, making the fire leap and hiss. And there, standing in the center of the storm as if she owned it, was the thermal anomaly. She was tall, impossibly tall, and her skin was the color of bleached bone, a stark, luminous white against the night. A ragged, burned black cloak whipped around her, doing nothing to hide the apparatus of her captivity. She was bound in silver. It was not mere handcuffs. It was an intricate harness, a web of thick chains and articulated plates that covered her torso, neck, and arms. Runes were carved deep into the metal, and they were burning. A faint, holy steam rose wherever the silver touched her skin. But it was her eyes that held him. They were not red. They were the color of burning embers. A deep, furious, and exhausted orange red that pulsed with a life of their own. Black blood, thick and viscous, dries from a dozen small wounds where the silver harness bit into her flesh. It hit the snow on the porch with an audible sizzle. For a long moment, they just stared, the warden, and the impossibility. Then she spoke. Her voice was not a whisper. It was the sound of shattered crystal, of ancient velvet, of absolute authority that had been strained to the breaking point. "I am Empress Selene Dracovar." Gareth's blood, which had been sluggish with whiskey and retirement, turned to ice water. The rumor, the legend, the ghost. She took a single, pained step forward, the chains rattling with a heavy, melodic sound. She looked down at the rifle he had pointed at her chest, not with fear, but with a kind of weary disdain. "I am hunted," she said, as if stating an obvious fact. Gareth's training screamed at him. Threat. Apex predator. Neutralize. But his voice came out flat. Dead. "Wrong house. We don't subscribe to the Imperial newsletter." A corner of her pale mouth twitched. "Your humor is as thin as your walls." "Warden." He tensed. How did you know? I smelled it. Her burning gaze dropped, moving from his face to his arms, to the faint, scarred-over tattoos that peeked from under his sleeves. The blood of an eclipse warden, a scent I have not encountered in a very long time. She leaned against the doorframe, a sudden, very human wave of exhaustion hitting her. That is why I am here. Only warden blood can unmake wardencraft. She lifted her bound arms, the burning silver runes flaring in the darkness. These chains are of your making. Before Gareth could process this, before he could decide whether to shoot her or slam the door, a new sound cut through the blizzard. It was faint at first, carried by the wind. It was not thunder. It was singing, a deep, resonant, male choir battle hymn, a Latin chant that pulsed with power and righteousness. As he listened, a light appeared over the forest. A brilliant, white-gold spotlight lanced down from the clouds, sweeping across the treetops, turning the snow to a field of diamonds. Celine turned her head, and for the first time, Gareth saw true, primal fear in her ember eyes. "The Dawn Legion," she hissed, the name tasting like ash. As she said it, she crumpled. Her strength, held together by sheer will, finally gave out. She collapsed onto his porch, a tangled mess of pale limbs, black cloak, and burning silver. Gareth stood frozen in the doorway, the storm raging on one side, the fire crackling on the other. He knew the Dawn Legion. Oh, he knew them. The militant, fanatical arm of the New Sun Church. Holy warriors who saw the Crimson Sun Accords not as a treaty, but as a temporary ceasefire. And he knew the man who led them. High Inquisitor Armand Vale. Vale, a man who preached purity and practiced extermination. A man who would burn an entire city block to kill a single rogue psychic, callously referring to the human casualties as acceptable tithing. Vale, who had crossed paths with the wardens on more than one occasion, and who held a special, venomous hatred for their sympathetic brand of justice. The light swept closer, the holy music growing louder. They were moving fast. They had her scent. Gareth looked at the unconscious, bleeding, and shackled Empress at his feet. This was his choice. He could close the door, lock it, let the Dawn Legion take her. It was the legal, proper, and sensible thing to do. It would be convenient. He could go back to his whiskey and his fireplace and his retirement. Or he could defy the most powerful militant force on the continent. He could drag the living incarnation of a vampire legend into his cabin. He could take the chains he recognized early generation warden issue, infused with consecrated Maytech off a monster. He could, in essence, light the fuse on the entire, fragile piece of the Valefall world. The holy light washed over the cabin, making the shadows in his living room stretch and writhe. Gareth Hale looked at the sky, then at the woman. He felt the old, familiar ache in his bones, the pull of a war he thought he had left behind. "Damn it!" he snarled. He grabbed the Empress Selena Dracovar by her cloak, the silver chains searing his glove, and dragged her inside, slamming the heavy oak door against the storm, the light, and the oncoming holy war. The heavy oak door slammed shut, cutting off the howl of the blizzard and the sound of the approaching choir. For a moment, the only sounds in the cabin were the crackle of the fire and Gareth's own ragged breathing. He threw the 1-inch-thick steel deadbolt, a piece of hardware far too robust for a simple woodland cabin. He turned and looked at the heap on his floor. The Empress Selena Dracovar. She was conscious. Her ember eyes narrowed, tracking his every move. She was a coiled spring of silver and fury. "Sir," Rust's voice crackled from the wall grill, "you have introduced an unknown, thermally chaotic, and heavily metallic entity into the habitat. My protocols suggest." "Shut down all external-facing protocols. Rust," Gareth commanded, his voice low. "Go dark, silent running, and activate perimeter defenses. Level 3. Level 3. Sir, that protocol is reserved for, yes. Siege. Activating. A series of dull, heavy thunks sounded from beneath the floorboards, followed by a low-frequency hum that vibrated in Gareth's teeth. Outside, barely audible over the storm, was the mechanical click-hiss of pressure plates arming an arcane energy-laced razor wire spooling out from hidden compartments under the cabin's eaves. The vampire Empress pushed herself into a sitting position. The movement was fluid, graceful, even with dozens of pounds of consecrated silver weighing her down. The burning runes on the harness flared, and she let out an involuntary hiss of pain, her skin smoking. "You," she panted, her voice a razor's edge. "You are a fool. You should have left me to the dogs." Gareth tossed his rifle onto its rack by the door and turned to face her, deliberately unhooking his sidearm and placing it on the simple wooden table. He kept a combat knife in his boot, and another strapped to his forearm. But he wanted her to see his hands. It was an old interrogation trick. It also just felt right. "Oh, I thought about it," he said, walking to the whiskey bottle on the counter and pouring 2 fingers' worth into a glass. He pointedly did not pour her one. "But the paperwork would be a nightmare. Reason for vampire army on my lawn failed to recycle." She stared at him, her fire-flecked eyes unblinking. "You mock me, human. I mock everyone. It's a character flaw." He took a sip of whiskey, letting cheap fire burn his throat. "Look, Your Majesty, or whatever. If you're planning on eating me, you'll at least have to live long enough to say thanks for the save. Now, stay still. Let me see the welcome mat they left on you." He crouched in front of her, keeping a safe distance, but his eyes, trained by years of fieldwork, scanned the harness. His blood ran cold again. "Holy blood mechanism," he murmured, almost to himself. "Mark 7. Looks like consecrated silver alloy. Ma-Tech internal power source. Runic locks keyed to, well, damn. That's old school." Celine watched him, her aristocratic, pale face a mask of contempt and curiosity. "You know the craft. I told you I smelled like a warden." "You smelled a retired janitor," Gareth corrected, his fingers tracing the air an inch from a large, circular plate on her sternum. The runes there were glowing hottest. "But I used to moonlight for the people who built this. The Eclipse Wardens." He stood up and ran a hand through his short, unkempt hair. The pieces were slamming into place, and he did not like the picture they were making. This cabin, the reinforced door, the level 3 perimeter defenses, the cellar. Some shell corporation he had never bothered to trace had sold it to him for pennies. It was not a getaway. It was a safe house, a goddamn warden listening post, and he had just walked right into it, led by his own trauma. "This is warden work, all right," he said, turning back to her. "It's a techno-magic hybrid. The chains don't just bind, they drain, and they're keyed. Only the man who put them on, or someone who understands both the arcane matrix and the mechanical failsafe, can get them off." "Then get them off," she commanded, the royal "we" implied in her tone. Gareth laughed. It was a short, bitter sound. "Right, just like that. You see, this thing is designed to kill you if you tamper with it. Or kill me if I try the wrong combination." The wardens were paranoid, especially about royalty. The searchlight swept past the windows again, this time closer. The heavy bass of the battle hymn was a physical pressure against the walls. "He is coming," Celine whispered, and this time, the fear was back, sharp and acidic. "Armand Vale." Gareth's spine stiffened. The name was a punch to the gut. High Inquisitor Armand Vale. The shining sword of the New Sun Church, the butcher of Ethelberg. He remembered Vale, a tall man with a face that would have been kind, if not for the absolute, unyielding zealotry in his eyes. Vale believed in a pure, human-only world. He saw the Crimson Sun Accords as a pact with the devil, a temporary measure until humanity was strong enough to launch the final dawn and purge the globe of all supernatural parasites. His organization, the New Sun Church, was the de facto government in most reclaimed human territories. Their cities were gleaming white citadels, protected by massive sun towers that broadcast a field of consecrated energy, burning any non-sanctioned supernatural entity that came too close. They ran the supernatural prisons, grim places where creatures of the Veilfall were re-educated, or, more often, simply dissected. And they held the Covenant's ancient, binding contracts they had forced upon the weaker vampire houses, turning them into little more than leashed dogs. And Vale was their prophet, their general, their executioner. It was Vale who had given the order at Ethelberg. A simple containment mission for Gareth's warden team had turned into a sanctioned cleansing when Vale's Dawn Legion arrived. They had locked down the district men, women, children, and a handful of rogue lycanthropes and set the whole thing to the torch. Thousands dead, human and supernatural. It made no difference to Vale. Eclipse 9 had been caught in the middle, trying to pull civilians out. The Dawn Legion had classified them as supernatural sympathizers and cut them down. Gareth had only survived by playing dead under his team's bodies for 17 hours. "Yes," Gareth said, his voice a low growl. "I know him." "He wants me," Celine said, her gaze fixed on the door. "He has been hunting me since my betrayal." "Your betrayal?" "My own court turned me over to him," she spat, the words full of venom. "Sold their Empress to the Sun Worshipper for a covenant, for a few scraps of territory. And now he means to make an example of me, break me in the public square, to prove that even our oldest blood can be brought to heel by his new god." She looked up at him, the fire in her eyes banking low, turning into something desperate. "If you do not free me, Warden, I will die in this room, and he will take my source." Gareth frowned. "Your source. The blood. The reason I am who I am." "Sir," Rust interrupted, the AI's voice tinny and strained. "Multiple thermal signatures approaching. Approximately 50. No, 60. They are heavily armed, and they are not cold. Sir, my sensors rate them as righteous. That is not a standard thermal reading." "It's their shield. Rust. Arcane shielding, blessed by their priests. Scrambles, AI." Gareth explained automatically. He grabbed his rifle again. 60. Vale did not come to check. He came to conquer. Celine pushed herself to her feet, the chains clattering. She was taller than him by a good 6 inches, a column of white fury and black steel. "You think to fight them with that?" she sneered, nodding at his rifle. "Your little stick that spits metal. You are an ant in armor, human. You cannot fight the dawn." Gareth chambered around. The sound, a heavy, oily click-clack, was deafening in the small cabin. He looked at her, a cold, thin smile on his face. "You're right. I am an ant." He tapped the side of his rifle. "But this ant and his little stick shot your entire immortal, godlike empire to a standstill. We did it with bolt-action rifles, caffeine, and a sheer pathological refusal to die." He jabbed a thumb at his own chest. "Humanity. We're the universe's cockroach. We don't win by being stronger. We win by outlasting everyone. We win by being too stubborn to burn." She stared at him, her burning eyes wide. The contempt was gone, replaced by a flicker of something else. Shock. Maybe even respect. He saw it then, beyond the fangs and the fire and the title. She was not just a monster. There was a weight to her, the crushing gravity of someone who had ruled for centuries, someone who had seen it all and lost it all. Her poise, even in chains, was regal. When she looked at his warden tattoos, it was not just with the anger of a captive. There was something else there, a flicker of recognition, a shared pain, maybe even guilt. The singing stopped. The sudden, absolute silence was more terrifying than the noise. "Tactical decision time," Gareth muttered. He looked around the cabin. One room, one door, one set of windows, a death trap. "The safe room," he said. "The cellar. Move." "I am an Empress. I do not move on the order of—" Gareth crossed the space in 2 strides. He grabbed the central harness plate on her chest, his gloved hand sizzling against the heated silver. She cried out, a sound that was half shriek, half snarl, and slammed him against the wall. The cabin's log beams groaned, even chained, even drained. She was stronger than a bull. He grunted, his vision tunneling. "Listen to me, you royal pain in the ass. Option 1, I hide you in the cellar. It's shielded, lined with lead and cold iron and old-world magic. He might not sense you. I pretend I'm just a grumpy local." "He will know," she hissed, her face inches from his. He could smell ozone and old blood. "Option 2, he choked out. "I shoot him in his self-righteous face the second he steps on my porch. Which, believe me, is tempting. But 60 of his fanatics will turn this cabin, and you, and me, into a smoking crater in about 10 seconds. So you choose to hide, like an ant. I choose to live, Your Highness. Something you seem to be pretty bad at, considering your current accessories." He pushed against her, using the wall for leverage. "The cellar. It's the only play we have." He was forcing her, half dragging, half pushing, toward the thick bearskin rug in the corner that hid the trapdoor. As he did, his hand brushed against the main locking mechanism, just below her collarbone. His fingers, trained to read by touch, brushed a sigil. It was not a standard warden mark. He froze. It was a small, intricate carving, almost worn away, a serpent eating its own tail. But inside the circle was a stylized tree with its roots and branches intertwined. Project Yggdrasil. It was a myth, a ghost story wardens told rookies to scare them. A Black Ops think tank from before the Accords, dedicated not to fighting the supernatural, but to weaponizing it. Rumors said they had done more than fight vampires. They had tried to edit them, redesign their bloodlines for human use. The project was supposedly shut down after it produced no viable results. That was the official story. Looking at the sigil on the chains of the lost vampire Empress, Gareth suddenly knew, with chilling certainty, that no viable results was a lie. These chains were not just meant to hold her. They were meant to read her, to download the very source code of her being. Before he could say anything, a new sound echoed through the cabin. Knock, knock, knock. It was a gentle, polite, almost fatherly sound. A sound at complete odds with the 60 wholly powered soldiers standing in the blizzard behind him. Gareth and Celine stopped, their personal battle forgotten. "My son," a voice called from the porch. It was just as Gareth remembered, warm, reasonable, and dripping with absolute, terrifying authority. "Please open the door. The storm is terrible, and my men are cold." Vale paused, as if listening. "I am High Inquisitor Armand Vale. I am just here for a routine safety check," he called again, his voice radiating peaceful concern. "And, of course, I know she is in there." The air in the cabin was a thick, charged silence, broken only by the hiss of the fire and the polite, murderous voice outside. "He knows," Celine breathed, her voice a low, vibrating growl. The ember in her eyes pulsed. "He can smell me." "He smells something," Gareth hissed back, his mind racing through tactical options. Every exit was covered. Every window was a sniper's sightline. He was a rat in a box. He smells blood, and he smells magic. Don't give him a target. He shoved her, hard, toward the bearskin rug in the corner. The cellar, now. I will not hide in the dirt like a— He knows you're in here, Empress, Gareth interrupted, his voice a steel whip. Do you want him to know you're in here, chained and helpless? Or do you want him to think he's wrong? Your arrogance is going to get us both killed. Move. For a second. He thought she would strike him. The air crackled. Her fangs, long and pearlescent, descended. But the voice from outside, patient, kind, called again. Son, please. Do not make me ask my men to breach your door. It is so destructive, and the cold is very bitter. That broke her paralysis, with a snarl that sounded like tearing silk. Celine moved. Gareth ripped the heavy rug aside, revealing a thick, iron ring trapdoor. He twisted the handle, a complex, silent mechanism, and lifted. A rush of cold air, and the smell of damp earth. Iron, and something else, something ancient and ozonic, like a lightning strike frozen in stone, wafted up. In, he commanded. She gave him one last look of profound hatred before dropping, with unnerving grace, into the black square. Do not lock it, she ordered. Do not, he mimicked. Tell me what to do. He slammed the heavy door, the sound a dull thud. He threw the rug back over it, kicked it straight, then strode to the counter. He picked up his half-empty glass of whiskey, ran a hand through his hair to make it look like he had been sleeping, and unbuttoned the top 2 buttons of his flannel shirt. He shuffled to the door, deliberately making his gait slow and annoyed. I'm coming, he yelled, pitching his voice to sound like a grumpy, half-drunk homesteader. Keep your damn robes on. He took a deep breath, composed his features into a mask of bored irritation, and unbolted the door. He opened it 6 inches. The wind immediately tried to rip it from his hand. Standing on his porch, framed by the swirling snow and the holy, golden light of 2 armored paladins holding thermal lances, was High Inquisitor Armand Vale. He looked exactly as Gareth remembered from the Ethelberg files. Tall, with a lean, ascetic face, silver hair brushed back from a high forehead, and eyes of a clear, piercing blue. He wore no helmet, just the deep crimson, high-collared robes of his office, which seemed to shed the snow and wind as if they were mundane annoyances. He was smiling. It was a beautiful, compassionate, terrifying smile. Thank you, my son, Vale said, his voice a warm balm against the storm. May I come in? The light of the sun is bright, but your fire looks far warmer. I'm not your son, Gareth grumbled, and I'm not really in the mood for company, or sermons. Vale's smile did not flicker. Ah, a man of solitude. I understand that. But this is official church business. We are tracking a fugitive, a creature of immense darkness. Our sensors tracked it to this valley. We just need to confirm the area is secure. For your own safety, of course. Vale took a step forward, a gentle, non-threatening motion. Gareth held his ground, blocking the door. Area's secure. Just me, the mice, and a bad-tempered AI. Now if you'll excuse me. Vale's gaze sharpened, the blue in his eyes turning to Arctic ice. I can smell the blood, son, fresh, and old. He sniffed the air, a delicate, wine-tasting motion. This air is thick with the shadow, and— He leaned closer. Gareth fought the urge to flinch. Vale's eyes fixed on Gareth's throat, then dropped to his wrist, where the edge of his faded warden tattoo peeked from his sleeve. It is thick with old sins. You are not a farmer. The pretense evaporated. The air between them dropped 20 degrees. Get off my porch, Inquisitor, Gareth said, his voice flat. Vale sighed, a sound of profound disappointment, as if scolding a favored pupil. "I had hoped you would be reasonable. I know who you are, Gareth Hale, Eclipse 9, the sole survivor of Ethelberg, the one who slipped away." He motioned to the paladins, who raised their lances. "We, however, know a warden safe house when we see one," Vale continued, his voice hardening. "This little cabin is non-compliant. My men will conduct a thorough sweep." "This is private property," Gareth said, his hand dropping to where his sidearm usually hung. He cursed himself for leaving it on the table. "There is no private property when it comes to heresy," Vale replied. He looked past Gareth, into the warm, fire-lit cabin. "She is here. I can feel her exquisite, royal blasphemy. Give her to me, Gareth, and I will be lenient. I will even overlook your retirement." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." Vale stepped so close they were almost touching. His voice dropped to an intimate whisper. "Do you know what she is? She is the key. The first lock." "The church we are on the verge of a new age. Gareth. A world finally balanced, purified. But to achieve it, we need the old codes. And she is in the library." He smiled again. "People like us, son, the soldiers, the ones who have seen the true face of the night. We do not have the right to retire. We only have the right to choose our side when darkness falls. Now, make your choice. Step aside." Gareth looked at Vale's clear blue eyes, at the 60 soldiers in the dark, at the swirling snow. He thought of the chained woman in his cellar. He thought of the Yggdrasil sigil. He stepped aside. "Wise," Vale murmured. He swept into the cabin, his 2 paladin guards following, their heavy, power-assisted armor clanking on the wooden floor. Vale's gaze was sharp. He took in the empty whiskey glass, the weapons rack, and the sidearm on the table. He walked the perimeter of the small room, his boots silent. He passed the bearskin rug, his gaze lingering on it for a heartbeat. Gareth's heart hammered against his ribs. But Vale did not stop. He walked to the fireplace, extending his bare hands to the blaze. "A simple life," he mused. "It is what we all fight for. Is it not a home? A fire? Peace?" He turned. "You failed to save your team, Warden. But you do not have to fail again. The world is changing. The church needs men who understand the old ways. Men who are not afraid of necessary sacrifices." He was recruiting. Right here, right now, with a 60-man army at his back and a vampire Empress in the cellar. The sheer, breathtaking arrogance of the man was almost impressive. "I'm just a janitor, inquisitor," Gareth said. "I'm done with sacrifices." Vale's face hardened. "No. You are a tool, temporarily laid aside. You will be picked up again, by us or by them." He turned and glided to the door. "My men will establish a perimeter. This storm is thick. It scrambles our holy sensors. We will wait until it passes, and then we will be certain." He paused at the threshold. "Do not try to leave, son. The night is full of monsters, but we are the light that burns them." He stepped out onto the porch. "Seal it," he commanded. Gareth moved to slam the door, but Vale held up a hand. One of the paladins stepped forward and slammed a heavy, fist-sized device onto the wooden doorframe. It hissed, and a glowing golden sigil, a stylized sunburst, burned itself into the wood. "A ward of observation," Vale explained, his voice kind once more. "It will alert me if anything non-human crosses this threshold. Either way. Good night, Warden. May the sun bless your dreams." Vale turned and was swallowed by the blizzard, his paladins flanking him. Gareth slammed the door and threw the bolt. He leaned against the wood, his forehead pressed to the cool timber. His heart was a trapped bird in his chest. He was shaking, not from fear, but from a cold, familiar rage. He had survived. He had let the butcher of his team walk through his house, touch his things, and smile at him. He heard a scraping sound below. He crossed the room, kicked the rug aside, and ripped the trapdoor open. Selene Dracovar was halfway up the iron ladder. Her face was a mask of incandescent fury. She climbed the last 2 rungs and entered the room, her burning silver chains rattling. "You let him go," she hissed. "You're welcome," Gareth retorted, his voice dripping with acid. "That dirt you were hiding in just saved your unlife. He was there inches from me, I could've." "You could have nothing," Gareth roared, his own control snapping. He slammed his fist against the log wall, the impact shuddering the entire cabin. "You could have died. You, me, and this entire valley. What part of the 60-man army did you not understand? You had him. You could have taken him." "And then what?" Gareth shot back, stalking toward her. "What's the grand strategy? Your Highness, you kill him. His 60 paladins turn this place into holy fire. Let's say, by some miracle, you and I survive that. That sigil on the door. It's a dead man's switch. The second Veil's life signal flatlined. A message would have gone out to his entire command. Martyr. Holy war. You wouldn't just have a legion on your ass. You'd have the whole damn church. 1,000 of them. 10,000. They would have glassed this entire continent to get you. That's not a plan, that's a tantrum." Selene recoiled, not from the volume, but from the raw, tactical truth of his words. She was a ruler. She understood. "You are not wrong," she conceded, the words tasting like poison in her mouth. "But he has trapped us. That sigil. We are his prisoners." Gareth rubbed his face. The exhaustion of the last hour, the last 10 years, hitting him all at once. "He's not trapping us. He's waiting. The storm is too thick for his fancy magic sensors. He's just camping. He thinks he has us. And does he?" Gareth looked at her, at the burning chains, at the Yggdrasil sigil. Not yet. He sat at the table, picked up his sidearm, and began checking the mechanism, his hands moving on pure, muscle memory. "We have a few hours, maybe until dawn. When the storm breaks, he'll be back, and he won't be knocking." "Then you must free me," she said, calm now. "Now. While we have time, free me, and I will show you what a true storm looks like. I will end this." "I just explained it. We can't end this. We can only survive it." He snapped the slide of his pistol back into place. "And I'm not freeing you." Her eyes narrowed to slits. "You would break your word. You would keep me in these indignities and hand me to that fanatic." "I don't hand anyone to Veil," Gareth said, his voice dropping. "But I'm also not stupid enough to unleash an ancient, pissed-off vampire empress in my living room while I'm surrounded by holy warriors. I don't know you. I don't trust you. For all I know, you're worse than he is." They stared at each other, a perfect impasse. The fire crackled, the wind howled. Finally, Selene spoke, her voice devoid of its earlier rage. Now, just a cold, hard diamond. "We need each other, Warden. You cannot fight them alone. You are one mortal with a few old traps. I am Selene Dracovar. Even drained, even chained. I am more than they can handle. But I am vulnerable. The silver leech is my strength. I cannot fight at full power and fight these bonds." "So, a compromise," Gareth said. "A what?" "A compromise. I can't take the whole rig off. Not safely. Not without a full Warden lab and about a week. That Yggdrasil lock is tied into your goddamn physiology. But..." He stood and walked over to her, examining the harness again. "I might be able to loosen it. Disengage the peripheral restraints. Those on your arms and legs. It would keep the main drainage plate on your chest, so you'd still be weak. But you'd have your limbs. You'd be able to fight. Her eyes lit up. Do it. But, Gareth said, holding up a hand. Conditions. You set conditions for me. The sheer audacity made her laugh, a dry, cold sound. My cabin, my rules. Your Highness. Condition 1. You do not kill Vale. You do not kill any of his men. Not unless they are actively breaching that door, with intent to kill us. We are on defense. We are surviving. We are not starting a war on my porch. They are butchers. And we are not, Gareth cut her. Condition 2. No civilian casualties. If, by some miracle, a lost hiker wanders by, you don't touch him. Understood. There is no one for 100 miles. Condition 2, Gareth repeated, his voice unyielding. She ground her teeth. Fine. No civilian casualties. Condition 3. He paused, looking her dead in the eyes. You don't drink with me. You don't bite me. You don't feed on me. At all. Not even a nibble. Not unless I explicitly, and I mean explicitly, give you permission. Celine stared at him. The cold fury vanished, replaced by a slow, dangerous, and genuinely amused smile. It was a terrifying sight. Her pale lips curved, revealing the edges of her fangs. Of all the things you fear, Warden, she purred, that is what you name last you. A single, warm-blooded mortal, alone with a starving vampire, and you make my appetite a contractual clause. She let out that dry, rusty laugh again. I find this fascinating. You are a very strange ant. Am I clear? Gareth insisted. Oh, Crystal, little warden, I agree to your terms. She held out her bound wrists. Now, cut me loose. Not yet. Gareth turned from her and walked to a heavy, lead-lined steel footlocker in the corner. First, I find out just how bad this night is. He unlocked it and pulled out an ancient, hardened casing satellite comm unit. It was old-world tech, shielded against magic, EMPs, and prying eyes. He powered it up, the small green screen flickering to life. Rust, he said. Internal comms. Encrypted. Yes, sir. I am here. The AI's voice came from the comm unit's small speaker, tinny and strained. My external sensors are blind, but the cabin is now warm. I am picking up multiple, high-energy sigils. Vale's perimeter, Gareth confirmed. Rust, get me Mira. Pinging the offline city, sir. Bouncing the signal through 7 proxies. She is available. A burst of static, and then a new voice, female, sharp as glass, and laced with a thick urban accent. Pilgrim, is that you? I heard you were dead. Or worse, happy. Pilgrim was his old call sign. Not dead, Mira, and definitely not happy. I'm hot. Gareth, you haven't been hot in 10 years. You're retired. What's wrong? Inquisitor Vale is on my lawn, he said flatly. The voice on the other end lost all its sarcastic humor. Gareth, get out. Get out now. You are not hot. You are burning. You are a supernova. What did you do? I found a package. One he wants. One he can't have. A package, Mira's voice went quiet. A furious typing sound came through the speaker. Oh, you idiot. You absolute idiot. You found her. Didn't you, the Empress? The one everyone's been looking for. Tell me what's happening, Mira, Gareth said. It's bad, Gareth. It's end of the world bad. The New Sun Church is done playing nice. They're prepping for Operation Final Dawn, a full-scale global purge. They're just waiting for an excuse, a provocation, and you're sitting on it. What about the sanctuary her people? Mira laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. Her people. They're the ones who sold her out. The Crimson Noctuary is in a full-blown civil war. A dozen warlords are carving up the scraps. They gifted her to Vale to buy covenants, to get the church to look the other way while they slaughtered each other for her throne. She has no allies. Celine, standing by the fire, did not flinch, but her hands, clenched at her sides, were white-knuckled. "That's not even the worst part," Mira continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Something's wrong, Gareth. The magic is curdling. The witches, the seers. They're calling it the Pale Choir. Something is singing, deep down, in the blood, in the static. An old song, and it's making everyone mad. It's pushing the vampires to feed, the shifters to riot, the church to purge. It's a frequency, a signal, and it's screaming for slaughter." Gareth felt his blood turn to ice. He looked at Celine. Her eyes were closed. "I have to go," Mira said. "My trace is breaking up. Gareth Ethelberg. What happened there, it's happening again. Everywhere. Never trust a song. Pilgrim, do not trust." The line went dead, dissolving into static. Gareth slowly lowered the comm unit. He looked at Celine, who opened her eyes. The ember glow was dim, haunted. "The Pale Choir," she whispered. It was not a question. "It's what he wants. Vale. He doesn't just want an empress to parade in chains. He wants what is in me. The source. The song." Gareth walked to the medkit on his shelf. He pulled out a roll of bandages, a bottle of antiseptic, and a small, gray jar. "The silver, it's burning you," he said gruffly. She looked at him, surprised. "It is its purpose. To burn. To purify." "Sit," he commanded. He pointed to the single wooden chair. She, the Empress Celine Dracovar, sat. He knelt in front of her. "This will sting," he said. He opened the gray jar. It was a thick, ash-colored paste, Warden issue, a mix of silver nitrate, synthesized dragon's blood, and a heavy-duty null agent. He began, gently but firmly, cleaning the sizzling, blackened wounds where the silver harness dug into her wrists and neck. She hissed, her whole body tensing, but she did not pull away. "You are tending to me," she said, her voice a strange mix of disbelief and sarcasm. "Like a pet." "I'm a janitor," he grunted, focusing. "I clean up messes. You are a mess." They were silent for a long time as he worked. The cabin was filled with the smell of ozone, blood, and the sharp, chemical tang of the salve. "I am afraid," she said, her voice so low he almost missed it. He stopped. "Of Vale." "No, not of him." She looked at the fire, but her gaze was 1,000 years away. "I am afraid of the song, the choir. It has been in my blood since I became one. A whisper, a promise. It tells me to end things, to burn the world and rule the ashes. My entire reign, my entire life, has not been a war against your kind, human. It has been a war against that. A war to keep my own mind." She looked at him, her ember eyes wide and terrified. "And it is getting louder, Warden. And I'm very, very tired. What Vale wants is what he wants to take from me. I am afraid he will unleash it, that he will make me the puppet, the monster. I am not afraid of death. I am afraid of becoming what he thinks I am." Gareth finished wrapping her wrist. He stared at his own hands. He remembered the fire, the screams, the smell of roasted meat that had once been his friends. "Ethelberg," he said, his voice a rasp. "My last mission. Vale's fanatics were burning the district. My team Eclipse 9 were pulling civilians, trying to get them out, and a voice started in the back of my head." He looked up, meeting her gaze. "It wasn't mine. It was calm, sane. It told me to secure the area, to cleanse the contamination. It told me to kill my team, to kill the civilians I was saving. And then, when the work was done, to kill myself. He took a ragged breath. I thought it was just battle psychosis, trauma, the kind of thing that breaks soldiers. But it wasn't frantic. It was reasonable. It was the same cold, quiet, logical voice that tells me to clean my rifle. And it was telling me to slaughter everyone I knew. He stood up. I have a part of it too, don't I, this pale choir? Celine stared at him, her face pale with a new, dawning realization. Yes, she whispered. But it is different. For me, it is a symphony, an ocean that threatens to drown me. For you, you hear it. But you can tell it's not. She stood, her chains rattling. You are not just a warden. You are a resistor, a human. Your will holds it back. She looked at him now, not as an ant, but as an equal, a puzzle. We are both its victims, and both its containers. The cabin, once his sanctuary, now felt like the smallest, most dangerous room in the world, a bomb, and its containment unit, staring at each other. Right, Gareth said, his voice rough. Plan, fortify, prepare for Vale's return. He looked at the trapdoor. And find out what the hell is really in my cellar. Rust, he called. Are you still with me? Yes, sir, the AI's voice replied from the comm unit. I have been analyzing. The cellar. The Warden Tech Foundation. It is superficial. What do you mean, superficial? The lead and iron shielding, Russ said, was built on top of a pre-existing structure, a basalt chamber, carved. The runes are not in any Warden database. They are not in any database. They predate the Veil Fall. They predate written history. Gareth and Celine looked at each other. He's coming back, Gareth said. And he's not just coming for you. He's coming for that. He turned back to Celine. Okay, time to keep my end of the bargain. But you remember the rules. He grabbed his toolkit, a calibrated sonic driver, a set of runic picks, a vial of something blue. He knelt before her, not as a subject, but as a technician. This is going to hurt, he said. I am familiar with the sensation, she replied dryly. He pressed the sonic driver to the main lock on her right wrist. He did not enter a code. He did not pick it. He simply set the frequency, his other hand on the Yggdrasil sigil on her chest. I, Warden, in light and shadow, command this lock, he intoned. The old Warden override chant. Release, but do not break. Disengage peripheral restraints. Code, Ethelberg, 90. The last part was his own. A high-pitched, agonizing whine filled the room. The runes on her chains flared white. Celine screamed. It was not a hiss. It was not a snarl. It was a raw, piercing sound of absolute agony and absolute release. A wave of pure, black, cold energy exploded from her, slamming Gareth back. He flew across the room and hit the log wall. The breath punched from his lungs. The cabin's lights, the fire, the glowing sigil on the door. Everything was extinguished in an instant. The room was plunged into absolute darkness and silence. Rust! Gareth choked from the floor, his vision swimming with black spots. There was no answer. The only sound was the heavy clank-clank of the chains on Selena's arms and legs, now severed, falling to the floor. Then, two embers lit up the darkness. Her eyes, they were not just pulsing, they were burning, twin furnaces of cold, ancient power. She stood. He could see her silhouette against the faint moonlight from the snow-covered window. The central harness on her torso was still lit, but it was dimmer, struggling. From her back, shadowy, intangible tendrils of pure darkness writhed and whipped, tasting the air. She looked at her hands, flexing her long, pale, now free fingers. Gareth, groaning, pushed himself up and fumbled for the pistol on the table. Celine, he gasped, leveling the gun with a shaky hand. The agreement. She turned to him. The power rolling off her was a physical weight, crushing the air from the room. The choir, he knew, was a deafening symphony in her head, screaming for blood, for freedom, for revenge. She could kill him. She could drain him dry and be halfway across the state before Vale even knew she was loose. She took one step toward him, then another. She stopped, inches from the barrel of his gun. She took a deep, shuddering breath. The shadowy tendrils retracted. Her eyes, slowly, painfully, dimmed from furnaces back to pulsing, burning embers. The agreement, she repeated, her voice a raw, cracked whisper. I remember. She looked down at the trapdoor, then back at him. She offered him a pale, elegant, and imposition deadly hand. Now, little warden, she said, her voice regaining its strength. Let us go and see what our ancestors were so afraid of. The cold, dark energy from Celine's partial release was still hanging in the air, a tangible ozone that prickled Gareth's skin. He was on his feet, pistol in hand, the table between him and the Empress. The truce was new, fragile, and based on 3 rules he was not sure she would even remember. So, he said, his voice rough as he relit a kerosene lamp, the only light source that had survived the blast. The cellar. Before Celine could reply, a new sound, far greater than the blizzard, shattered the night. It was the sound of 1,000 voices roaring as one, not in song, but in judgment. Heretic. The voice was amplified, magical, and undeniably Vale's. It did not come from the porch. It came from everywhere. This cabin, this den of corruption, is hereby declared a supernatural emergency zone. Class 1. All souls within are anathema. All resistance is blasphemy. Sir, Rust's voice shrieked from the comm unit on the floor, the AI having rebooted. Massive energy surge. The perimeter wards are melting. Gareth was already moving. He grabbed the comm unit. Rust, execute Protocol Chimera. Now all of it. Executing good luck, sir. He sprinted to the window, risking a glance. The forest was gone. It had been replaced by an army. The 60 men before were just the honor guard. Now, there were hundreds. Ranks of gleaming paladins in silver and gold armor. A line of robed figures, church witches, raising their hands, their faces obscured by mirrored masks. And behind them, the weapons. Sun weapons, he breathed. They were mobile artillery platforms on treads, each mounting a massive, intricate golden armillary sphere. As he watched, the spheres began to spin, gathering a light that was not the moon, a heat that was not the fire. He was not waiting for the storm to clear, Celine said, her voice deadly calm as she stood beside him at the window. The harness on her torso was still glowing, a parasitic leash, but her arms and legs were free. He was waiting for his artillery to arrive. He just declared us a Class 1 emergency, Gareth said, running to his weapons locker. He began strapping on a heavy-duty tactical vest, shoving magazines into pouches. That's not an arrest. That's an extermination order. You cannot fight this, Warden. Your traps, your little sticks. My traps, Gareth grunted, are just the opening act. He slammed his hand onto a concealed panel beside the fireplace. Chimera is active. The ground heaved. Vale and his army were less than 200 yards away, advancing in a perfect, holy phalanx. They expected a trapped, terrified warden and a crippled vampire. What they got was a warden safe house built on top of a black site arsenal. The first volley from the sun weapons fired. 3 beams of pure, white-hot consecrated light lanced through the darkness, aimed to turn the cabin into a pile of smoking ash. They never hit. Halfway to the cabin, the beams struck a newly formed, shimmering, multifaceted energy shield. The air screamed as the light bent, refracted, and scattered, splashing harmlessly against the snow. "That," Gareth said, slinging his rifle over his shoulder, "is an old Warden-issue prism shield, good for exactly one solid hit. And Vale just wasted his opening salvo on it." Vale, from the back, raised his hand. The army stopped. He had not expected this. "Phase 2, Gareth muttered. He ran to the heavy footlocker, where he kept his other comm system, the one patched into the cabin's external sound system. "Rust, are the speakers still active?" "Affirmative, sir. Though I question the tactical viability of audio-based deterrence against—" "Just patch me through, and get the Sparrow file queued." "Sparrow file?" Celine asked, watching him with narrowed eyes. "Psychological operations," Gareth said, flicking a switch. "You know, for an immortal, you're pretty new to this. You think war is just about hitting things? It's not. War is about making the other guy too scared, or too confused, to hit you." He clicked the microphone. His voice, now amplified by a dozen hidden speakers, boomed out over the snow, mocking Vale's earlier broadcast. "Inquisitor, good to see you. I brought some friends, I see. Sorry about the mess. The place is really under construction, but since you're here for a safety inspection, maybe you can help me. I've got this recording, and I just can't make out what it's saying." Vale stood stock still. "Do not listen to his lies, witches. Break that shield." "Rust, play it." A new voice filled the valley. It was not Gareth's. It was a recording, staticky, but clear. The voice of a high-ranking cardinal from the New Sun Church. A voice every paladin there would recognize. "Inquisitor Vale's Final Dawn initiative is not, I repeat, not sanctioned by the Holy Synod. His actions in the Northern Territories are rogue. He is acting without the Sun's authority." The paladins in the front rank faltered. They looked at each other. The church witches hesitated, their chanted spells flickering. "It is a trick," Vale roared, his voice cracking with fury. "A demonic deception. Fire all weapons." "Too late," Gareth murmured. The second volley of sun weapons fired. But this time, they were not aimed at the prism shield. They were aimed at the ground. Boom. The entire valley floor erupted. The Sparrow file was not just an audio clip. It was a package. Audio, paired with a set of geo-coordinates for the other traps. The cheap, nasty, brilliant ones. The ground between the cabin and Vale's army had been seeded with surplus Warden mines, delivered by a high-altitude drone from his old contact. Sparrow, just days before. But they were not explosives. They were void sinks. As the holy light from the sun weapons hit the snow, the mines activated, drinking the consecrated energy, creating localized vortexes. The paladins who had been standing on them did not explode. Their holy shields, their blessed armor, their very light, was snuffed out in an instant, plunging them into sudden, terrifying darkness and cold. It was chaos. "Now," Gareth said. He grabbed his rifle. "We're not done." He looked at Celine. "You stay here. That's still a Class 1 extermination order out there. They'll—" He was cut off by Vale's voice, which had lost all its warmth. It was a raw, primal scream of pure, incandescent rage. "Ritual of submission, all of you bring me their heads." The church witches, their mirrored masks now glowing with a terrifying, golden light, raised their hands in unison. They began to chant, a high-pitched, driving, painful sound that vibrated in Gareth's bones. "Gareth," Celine gasped, her hands flying to her head. The song, they're amplifying it." Gareth felt it too. The whisper from Ethelberg. The cold, logical voice. "End this. End her. End yourself." But it was worse. A massive, golden wave of pure dominion washed out from the witches, passing through the cabin walls as if they were not there. It was a submission spell, a ritual designed to break the will of any and all supernatural entities within its radius, forcing them to their knees, paralyzing them in a state of absolute, agonizing terror. Celine screamed. It was not the sound of release she had made earlier. This was a sound of pure, unadulterated torment. The golden light hit her, and her partially freed power was turned against her. The shadow tendrils that had been writhing in the air now impaled her, dragging her to the floor. The holy energy field reacted violently with the pale choir song inside her. She collapsed, convulsing, her ember eyes rolling back in her head. The consecrated silver harness on her chest burned white-hot, sensing its moment of victory. "Celine!" Gareth yelled, dropping his rifle and moving toward her. But the wave hit him, too. It passed through him, a feeling like ice water being injected into his veins. He felt the cold, logical whisper rise to a scream in his mind. Kneel. Obey. Die. Gareth Hale stood up straight. He blinked. He looked at Celine, thrashing in agony on the floor, pinned by a spell that should have crippled him. He looked at the golden light washing over his own skin, and he felt nothing. The whisper was there, but it was just a whisper. The spell was there, but it was just light. It had no purchase, no grip. It slid off him like water off steel. "Huh," Gareth said, the adrenaline haze clearing, replaced by a cold, sharp, and terrifying clarity. "So it still works, outside." Vale and his witches were watching. They expected the cabin's occupants to be paralyzed, ready for execution. So when Gareth Hale opened the front door and walked out onto the porch, they stopped. He was just a man in a flannel shirt and a tactical vest, holding a rifle. The blizzard was still raging. The golden light of the submission spell was still washing over the battlefield, and it was bending around him. Gareth Hale was the eye of the storm. The magic, the holy energy. The psychic screams, they all touched the edge of his skin and simply ceased to exist. The snowflakes that drifted near him did not just melt. They vanished. The golden light did not just dim. It left a man-shaped hole of perfect, normal, mundane darkness. "What? What is that?" one of the paladin captains stammered, his voice amplified by his helmet comm. "His shield has no frequency," Vale, from the rear, stared, his face pale, his blue eyes wide with a dawning, fanatical awe. "He is not shielded," Vale whispered. "He is empty." Gareth had hidden it all his life. He had thought it was a curse, a flaw, a part of him that was just wrong. The reason magic healers could never fix his broken bones. The reason holy wards made his skin itch. The reason his own team's shields had sometimes flickered and died when he got too close. He was a null blood. A walking, talking human sinkhole for the supernatural. An anomaly. A 1 in a billion genetic quirk that made him, in a world drowning in magic, the ultimate blasphemy, a man who could simply turn it off. And for the first time in his life, he decided to use it. "Hey, Vale," he yelled, his voice carrying in the sudden, magicless hush around his porch. "You missed a spot." He raised his rifle. Not at Vale, but at the nearest spinning sun weapon. He did not need to aim at the crystal. He aimed at the power conduit running up its side. He fired. The sound of the high-velocity round was shockingly loud in the silence. The bullet, unhindered by any holy shield, which had just been nullified by Gareth's presence, struck the conduit. The sun weapon did not just stop. It imploded, collapsing in on itself as its own power, suddenly uncaged, consumed it. The paladins stared. Their holy light weapons were flickering. Their enchanted armor servos were seizing. The church witches were screaming as their spells unraveled in their hands. "He is a nullblood," Vale roared, his terror replaced by a sudden, ecstatic joy. "He is the key, the missing piece, the great silence." Do not kill him. Capture him. Capture him alive. The order threw his army into chaos. They had been primed for extermination. Now they had to switch to suppression tactics, to capture nets and concussion charges, all while their gear was failing. Gareth smiled. A cold, thin, warden smile. That's what I was waiting for. He turned back inside. Selene was still on the floor, but the pressure had lessened now that Vale's witches were distracted. She was on her hands and knees, black blood dripping from her nose. "Get up, Your Highness," Gareth said, offering a hand. He is," she gasped, staring at him, at the void that clung to him. "Yeah, I know. I'm a party pooper." He pulled her to her feet. "Now, here's the plan. You're the shadow. I'm the well. I'm the light switch." He stepped outside, back into the battle. "Stay in my pocket," he yelled. "My null field is about 30 feet wide. Inside it, you're just a woman in a weird corset. Outside it, you're a holy pincushion. Got it?" She bared her fangs. "And you? And what are you?" "I'm the guy who's going to get you through this." He did not run. He walked. He advanced from the porch, a 30-foot bubble of nothing moving with him. The paladins charged. They entered the bubble, their power armor limbs locked up, the enchanted steel becoming dead weight. Their glowing power swords became simple, unbalanced blades. Their helmet comms died, replaced by the sound of their own panicked breathing. And then Selene hit them. She was still weak, still drained. But in this null zone, she was not fighting magic. She was fighting 30 pounds of useless steel. And she was fast. She moved like a blur, a pale ghost in the dark. She did not use shadows, because there were no magic shadows in Gareth's void. She used pure, unadulterated speed and physics. A palm strike to a helmet, shattering the visor. An ankle pick, sending a 250-pound paladin crashing to the ground. A disarm, a broken wrist, a shattered knee. She kept her promise. She did not kill. She dismantled it. Gareth, meanwhile, was the anchor. He fought dirty. He had his rifle. But he also had the grenades he had made last night. Cheap, effective. He threw one. Not an explosive, but a high-intensity magnesium charge. In the null zone, it was just a bright light. But the paladins outside the zone, their eyes, magically enhanced to see in the dark, were suddenly blinded. He used psychological warfare too, yelling tactical nonsense into the chaos. Section 4. Flank them Alpha Team. Suppression fire. He had no teams. He had nothing. But the Dawn Legion did not know that. They heard call-outs and assumed a larger force. Selene watched him as they moved, a synchronized unit of destruction. She, the Empress of 1,000 years, and he, one short-lived, fragile human. He was bleeding shrapnel from his own minefield. He was breathing hard, the altitude and adrenaline taking their toll. But he was laughing, a low, grim, adrenaline-fueled laugh. He was a creature of chaos, a mortal man using duct tape explosives, cheap psychology, and a biological flaw to hold off a holy army. For the first time in her immortal life, Selene Drekovar was well and truly impressed. "Ant!" she yelled, ducking under a capture net. "Your left," Gareth spun. A paladin, who had bravely dropped his failing gear, was charging him with a simple combat knife. Gareth did not raise his null field. He raised his boot. He met the charge with a perfectly executed warden maneuver that broke the man's ankle and sent him face first into the snow. "Thanks for the heads up." They were a whirlwind, the void and the shadow, the null-blood and the Empress. They tore through the first line of paladins, leaving a trail of groaning, disabled soldiers. But Vale was adapting. "Sun weapons," he roared. "Do not target the cabin, target them. Saturation fire, pin them. Witches contain the void." The remaining sun weapons, the ones not destroyed or nullified, began to fire. not in beams, but in wide, sweeping arcs, trying to box them in. "We can't stay out here," Gareth panted, yanking Celine behind the wreckage of an imploded artillery piece. "He's just going to shell us to death." A holy lance of light, a physical spear thrown by a paladin captain, flew past his head. It nicked Celine. She cried out, a sharp intake of breath, as the consecrated energy burned a long gash across her shoulder. The silver harness flared, drinking in the holy energy, using it to reassert its dominance. She crumpled, the new wound and the old chains overwhelming her. "Damn it!" Gareth grabbed her, dragging her. Back to the cabin now. He fired his rifle, 3 quick shots, providing cover fire. He was out of tricks. The psyops were done, the mines were spent, the shield was gone. All he had left was his void, and it was not enough against sheer artillery. Vale saw his retreat. He saw the wounded Empress. "He is pulling back, he is weak. Surge, surge. Capture them both." Gareth half-dragged, half-carried Celine back to the cabin, his null field protecting them from the worst of the spells. They stumbled through the smashed front door, the cabin's interior a wreck from stray energy blasts. The cabin was burning. A beam had struck the roof, and the old dry wood had gone up like tinder. "Well," Gareth coughed, leaning against the wall. "The bad news is, my insurance premiums are about to go up. The good news is, I had one more trap." He slammed his hand on the Chimera panel again. "Rust protocol last breath." "Sir, do it." "Gareth, what?" Celine gasped, clutching her bleeding shoulder. "The cabin is a loss," Gareth panted. "But the warden's safe house has a fail-safe." The paladins were storming the porch, forming a shield wall. "It is over, Nullblood," Vale's voice boomed. "Give us the Empress, and surrender yourself to the Church. You will be our salvation." "Go to hell," Gareth yelled back. He looked at the warden failsafe panel. "Come on, you piece of junk." A massive, ear-splitting sonic whine erupted, not from the speakers, but from the cabin's foundation. It was a broad-spectrum frequency, designed to do one thing: shatter crystal. The paladins on the porch screamed as their helmet visors cracked. The church witches cried out as their focusing gems and scrying orbs exploded into dust. And out on the field, the massive, intricate crystal lenses of the remaining sun weapons shattered. Silence. The army was crippled. Their artillery was gone. Their witches were blinded. Their front line was deafened. Vale, standing in the back, was untouched. He stared at the burning, half-collapsed cabin. He looked at the wreckage of his army. He had lost. "Retreat," he roared, the word a physical blow. "Back to the encampment, regroup." The Dawn Legion did not flee. They retreated, organized, angry. They pulled back, taking their wounded, leaving the field to the burning cabin. Gareth slid down the wall, his rifle clattering to the floor. His adrenaline dump was complete, leaving him shaking and cold. The cabin was a ruin. The roof was about to collapse. He was bleeding from a dozen cuts. Celine was badly wounded, the holy lance burning on her shoulder deep and festering. But they were alive. "You!" Celine panted, clutching her shoulder. "You human! You are the most insane creature I have ever met." "Yeah," Gareth coughed, tasting smoke. "That's what they tell me." He looked out the broken doorway at the retreating lights of the Dawn Legion. Vale was gone, but he was not defeated. He had seen the Nullblood. He had found his key. "He's not going to stop," Gareth whispered. "He'll be back." He was no longer Gareth Hale, the retiree. He was not even Gareth Hale, the warden. He was the Nullblood, most valuable goal on the planet. And he was trapped in a burning shack with a wounded vampire Empress. "The cellar," he gasped, pushing himself up. "We have to go, before the roof comes down." He looked at the trapdoor, now exposed, the bearskin rug a pile of cinders. The battle was over. The real war had just begun. The roof groaned, a deep, timber-tearing sound. A river of burning embers and molten snow poured into the living room, hissing and filling the air with acrid, choking smoke. "Move, now." Gareth grabbed Celine's good arm, hauling her toward the exposed trapdoor. The floor was hot, the air unbreathable. Celine, her shoulder a mess of burned flesh and scorched silver, stumbled, her strength almost gone. The holy lance had done more than wound her. Its consecrated energy was actively poisoning her, and the still locked chest harness amplified the effect, feeding on the holy power. "I cannot," she gasped, her legs buckling. "Like hell you cannot." Gareth got under her shoulder, his own body screaming in protest from a dozen cuts. He took her weight, his null blood field flaring unconsciously, dampening the magical fire on her wound for a moment, giving her a second of relief. "You are an Empress, right? Empresses do not get to die in a burning shack. It is bad for the brand." His sarcasm, even now, was a strange, grounding force. She put her arm over his shoulder, and together they half fell, half stumbled through the trapdoor and onto the iron ladder below. Gareth did not bother closing the door. The entire cabin was about to collapse, and it would be the perfect lid for their tomb. He slammed his fist on a secondary panel by the ladder, one marked with a biohazard symbol. "Rust. Seal the hatch. Full containment." "Affirmative, sir." The AI's voice crackled, this time from a speaker set into the cellar wall. "May I say that was a statistically improbable?" "Just do it," above them. A 1-inch thick steel plate slid across the cellar ceiling, slamming into place with a sound of pneumatic finality. Thump. Hiss. The sound of the roaring fire and the collapsing cabin was instantly muted, replaced by the heavy, oppressive silence of the earth and the drip, drip, drip of water. Gareth flicked on his tactical light. They were in the warden's safe room, the small, lead-lined, cold iron box he had originally intended to hide her in. It was packed with emergency supplies, old comms gear, and the musty smell of concrete. The floor vibrated, a deep, low, bass note that was felt more than heard. It was not from the collapse above. It was from below. Celine slid down the wall, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "The song is louder here." "Rust," Gareth said, his voice low. "Report." "Sir, the integrity of the lower chamber has been compromised." Rust's synthesized voice was strained, flickering with static. "The battle, the sonic resonance from the last breath protocol, has created a fissure." "A fissure in what? What is this place? Rust the truth. All of it." "This structure," the AI began, "is not a warden safe house. The wardens found this cabin, this land. It is an anchor point. The original builders are unknown, but their purpose was clear. They constructed a deep vault, a containment unit. The wardens classified it as a Class 10 static anomaly and built their safe house on top of it, to monitor and to contain. What? Gareth was already checking his pistol, reloading a magazine with shaking, methodical hands. The AI database calls it Anomaly 0. The first wardens called it the Blood Heart. "Sir, my analysis, based on the energy readings I am now getting from the fissure, suggests this is the primary containment vessel for the psychic phenomenon you call the Pale Choir." Gareth and Celine looked at each other. The same thought passed between them. Vale was not retreating. He was repositioning. "He did not just want me," Celine whispered, her hand going to the Yggdrasil sigil on her chest harness. "He wanted this. He wanted the source." "The fissure, Rust. Where is it?" Rust activated a small blue light on the far wall. "The original warden-built structure ends here. Behind this wall is the vault. The stone is cracked. Energy readings are anomalous." Gareth walked to the wall. It looked like solid concrete, but when he pushed, it swung open. It was a fake, a simple partition. Behind it was a tunnel, not of concrete, but of carved, black basalt that seemed to drink the light from his flashlight. The air was cold, ancient, and thrummed with that deep, vibrating note. Thump, 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 thump. It was the sound of a heart the size of a mountain. "Gareth," Celine said, her voice small. He turned. "Stay here. You are in no condition." "I am an Empress, human," she said, pushing herself up the wall, her ember eyes burning with a new, cold fire. "That thing in there is part of my history. It is my blood. I will not let that fanatic claim it. I will go with you." "You will slow me down," he said flatly. "And you," she countered, "will be blind. You are a null-blood. You turn magic off. You are deaf, dumb, and blind to its language. I can hear it. I can speak it. You need me." She was right. He hated that she was right. "Fine. Same rules as before. Stay in my pocket. My null field will give you some cover from whatever that is." He turned and entered the black tunnel. She followed, a pale shadow behind him. The tunnel descended, spiraling deep into the earth. The air grew colder, but the thump-thump grew louder, more present. The walls were not just carved. They were covered in runes, complex, interlocking sigils that made Gareth's head ache just from looking at them. "Some of these I know," Celine whispered, her long, pale fingers tracing a spiraling symbol. "It is high ancient, before the schism, before the houses. This is the royal seal of the first. This is older than my empire." The tunnel suddenly opened into a vast, cavernous space. Gareth stopped, his light playing over the scene, his breath catching in his chest. It was a heart, a literal, colossal heart, 50 feet high, suspended in the center of the cavern by thick, black, metallic cables that looked more grown than forged. The heart itself was not just flesh. It was a pulsating mass of black basalt, glowing red crystal, and thick, coiling bundles of what looked like living, bleeding, petrified wood. Thump, 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 thump. With every beat, a wave of faint, red light washed through the cavern, and a chorus of whispers echoed in their minds. "Join us. Sing. Bleed. Become." "By all the gods," Celine breathed, her hand gripping Gareth's arm. Gareth shone his light on the cavern floor. It was a mosaic, a complex circular pattern of inlaid metal and stone. Around the heart, in a perfect circle, were countless, smaller sigils, human sigils, Old Norse, Enochian, cuneiform, and on the heart itself, bound by the metallic cables, were those same ancient vampire seals. This was not a prison, Gareth realized, his voice a horrified whisper. This was a partnership. Humans and vampires built this, together. As he said it, the psychic pressure in the room intensified. The red light from the heart flared, and the whispers became a vision. It was not a memory. It was an imprint, a story left in stone. He saw humans, primitive, fur-clad, wielding bronze spears. They were not fighting vampires. They were fighting titans, things of churning, chaotic shadow, elder gods pulled from the umbral realm in a forgotten war. He saw the humans, desperate, their spears shattering, their small gods failing. He saw their shamans, their blood priests, gathering in a circle. They were calling, not for a god, but for a tool, an equal, opposing force. He saw a tear in reality, a pool of intelligent, sentient darkness. The first humans, brave and terrified, approached it. They made a pact. They offered themselves. He saw the first man step forward, his arm cut open, offering his blood to the sentient shadow. The shadow changed him. It drank his mortality, and gave him something new, something powerful, fast, and eternal. He became the first, the origin. They chose this, Selene whispered, her eyes wide, seeing the same vision. They were not infected. They volunteered. They were weapons. The vision shifted. He saw the first vampires, a small, elite cadre, turning the tide. They tore the elder shadows apart. Humanity celebrated. They had forged the perfect weapon, but the weapon had a flaw. The shadow they had bargained with it was not just power. It was consciousness. Hungry, cold, melodic consciousness. The pale choir. It lived in the blood. And it began to sing. It sang of dominance, of hunger, of endless, glorious conflict. It sang to the new vampires, and it sang to the humans. It did not just want to win the war. It wanted the war to last forever. It found the violence in every heart and amplified it. The vision faded. The heart pulsed. Thump, thump. They created you, Gareth said, his voice flat. Humanity made you, to be our swords, and we put a disease in you, the choir. And now, Selene's voice was broken. We are sick. No, not a disease. A tool. A weapon. The voice was not Gareth's. It was not Selene's. High Inquisitor Armand Vale stepped from the shadows on the other side of the cavern. He was not alone. He was flanked by a dozen figures in sleek, black, rune-covered armor, not paladins. These were his inquest team, his surgeons, his real weapons. A tool, Vale repeated, his blue eyes gleaming with fanatical light. That has been left to rust for far too long. It is time for it to be reforged. Vale, Gareth growled, raising his rifle. Put that down, son. You cannot shoot me. You cannot touch me here. Vale gestured to the heart. This is the source, the nexus, first sin and ultimate salvation. For centuries, the Church has tried to destroy this, burn the supernatural from the world. They were fools. He walked forward, his inquest team fanning out. Their weapons not guns, but strange, scepter-like devices. You do not destroy such power, Vale preached, his voice echoing in the vast space. You control it, you harness it, you give it purpose. My purpose is my own, Selene spat, though she was leaning heavily on Gareth. Is it? Vale smiled his kind, terrible smile. Or is it the purpose the choir sings to you? The endless, pointless cycle of blood and war? No. I offer a new song, a human song, a song of order, of purity. He pointed at Gareth. And he is the key. What? Gareth said. Oh, Gareth, you did not think you were just a genetic quirk, a happy accident. You are the silence, the null blood. You are the one thing in all of creation that can touch the song, touch the blood, and not be changed by it. You are no warrior, son. You are the tuning fork, the instrument by which I will reformat this choir, and turn it from a chaotic dirge into a divine hymn, my hymn. You are insane, Gareth said. Am I? Vale's team had reached the circle. They slammed their scepters onto the floor, in a pattern. A new set of runes, golden and precise, lit up, overlying the ancient mosaic. I am the man who will end this war. I will use the choir's own song to turn every vampire, every lycanthrope, every heretic who refuses the light, into a mindless, obedient servant, or into ash. The choir will sing my song, and you are the one who will teach it the tune. No, Gareth fired. The bullet left his rifle, flew 10 feet, then stopped. It was not his null-blood field. It was Vale's. The golden runes flared. This is a holy place, Gareth, a place of will, and my will is stronger. Vale raised his hand. Begin the rite. The world dissolved. It was not a fight of fists and bullets. It was a fight of gravity. The golden runes flared, and a wave of force slammed Gareth and Celine. It did not throw them. It pinned them. They were dragged, telekinetically, into the center of the circle, onto two specific sigils, 10 feet apart, opposite poles. The Null, the vampire. "You see," Vale said, as he stepped into the circle, his own inquest team chanting. The ancients who built this, they understood. Balance. But they sought to imprison the power. I seek to unleash it. A beam of golden light shot from Vale's scepter, striking the blood heart. The heart roared, a sound of 1,000 voices screaming. The thump-thump became a frantic, pounding, desperate rhythm. Then the light split. 2 beams, one red, one black, lanced. The red beam, the color of blood and song, struck Celine. She screamed. The choir, raw and unfiltered, poured into her. Her ember eyes went wide, turning into solid white-hot orbs. Her body arched, the silver harness on her chest melting, dripping away as a greater, darker power claimed her. The shadow tendrils returned, no longer shadows, but coiling limbs of pure, solid night. She was becoming what she feared: the monster, the puppet, the god. The black beam, a conduit of absolute nothing, struck Gareth. Pain. It was not the pain of a wound. It was the pain of unbeing. His null blood, his curse, was his anchor in a world of magic. And Vale was using it, pulling on it, turning him into a siphon. He was being hollowed out, his senses, his magic resistance, his very life force, being drained away to create the silent space Vale needed to inject his own will. "Sing, my son," Vale cried, his face ecstatic, his arms raised. "Sing the song of man's dominion." Gareth was dying. He could feel his edges blurring, the cold, logical whisper of the choir trying to fill the void Vale was creating. He was a tool, just as he had always feared. He looked at Celine. She was on the edge. Her face was a mask of agony and ecstasy. Her fangs elongated, her body transforming. She was losing. And Gareth Hale got angry. A tool, he thought. No, I am not a tool. I am a warden. And wardens do not just turn magic off. We contain it. He had one choice. One last, desperate, stupid plan. Vale was pulling on his null field, using it as a siphon. So what if he gave him more? What if he did not just resist, but pushed? He stopped fighting. He stopped holding on. He let go. With a final, ragged breath, Gareth Hale did the one thing a null blood is never supposed to do. He turned his power inward. He did not just turn off the magic around him. He turned off the magic within him. Electrical signals in his own nerves. The faint, biological, arcane spark that makes a human alive. The connection between his mind and his body. He cut the cord. For Vale, it was like sucking on a straw and suddenly having the entire ocean jammed down his throat. The silent space he was using became an infinite, crushing void. The black beam, no longer a siphon, became a tidal wave of nothing, slamming back into his ritual, shattering his control. For Gareth, it was silence, absolute, cold, deafening silence. His vision went black. His hearing is gone. His sense of touch is gone. He was not in the cavern. He was not anywhere. He was an abstract thought, a memory, floating in an endless, cold, dark. He had done it. He had cut the line. But he was cut too. He was dying. He had maybe seconds. In the cavern, the black beam snapped, and Gareth's body, now just a piece of meat, collapsed. The red beam, the one connected to Celine, went wild. The choir, with Vale's control shattered, flooded her. A raw, screaming hurricane of power. Rule, feed, kill, end, rule. She was on the precipice. The monster. The god. She raised her head, her eyes pure white fire, and looked at the cowering, chanting inquest team. She looked at Vale, who was reeling, his golden ritual shattered. She could kill them all. She could drink this entire cavern dry. She could become the song. But as she looked, her gaze fell on the thing on the floor, the empty husk, the collapsed body of Gareth Hale. "If you're planning on eating me, you'll at least have to live long enough to say thanks. My cabin, my rules, Your Highness. I'm a janitor. I clean up messes. You are a mess." His stubbornness, his arrogance, his stupid, suicidal, human will. The ant that had risen at dawn, the man who had seen her, not as an empress, not as a monster, but as a mess. He had not saved her. He had not fought for her. He had fought with her, and he had just died for her. The choir screamed for her to ascend. Celine Dracovar screamed back. No, her choice, her humanity, the part of her that remembered being a volunteer, not a victim, rose up. She grabbed the raw, divine power of the pale choir, and instead of becoming it, she bent it. She was an empress, yes, but she was also a prisoner. She knew the shape of chains. With a roar that was more pain than power, she wielded her new strength, not as a sword, but as a manacle. She did not banish the song. She aimed it. She turned from the cowering soldiers and looked at the one man still standing. High Inquisitor Armand Vale. "You failed," he shrieked, raising his scepter. "You have ruined it. You wanted a new song, Inquisitor." Celine's voice was a chorus of 1,000 voices, yet it was still her own. "Then listen." She unleashed the choir, not in the world, but at him. The full, undiluted, raw, psychic force of the Bloodheart slammed into Armand Vale. He screamed. His blue eyes, once so clear, became pinpoints of white terror. He heard it all. The birth of a species. The hunger of 1,000,000,000 souls. The endless, driving, screaming madness of the song. He, who had sought to be its master, now became its only audience. His golden runes shattered. His scepter dissolved. The Bloodheart pulsed. The black, metallic cables shot out, not at Celine, but at the new, screaming signal. They wrapped around Vale. They pierced his armor, his flesh, his soul. He was lifted into the air. He was pulled, screaming, toward the massive, pulsating organ. The Bloodheart opened, a fissure of red light appearing on its surface. It drew him in. Vale's final, gurgling scream was cut off as the heart sealed around him. He was gone. The cavern was silent, save for the thump-thump of the heart. It was slower, calmer, almost sated. But the fissure in the stone, the one from the battle, was still there. And the new wound, where Vale had been absorbed, was weeping a slow, thick, golden ichor. The inquest team, their master gone, their ritual broken, scrambled to their feet and fled, vanishing back into the shadows. Celine collapsed. The power receded. Her eyes faded back to embers. The harness was gone, melted, but the holy wound on her shoulder was still there, angry and black. She was free, and she was exhausted. She looked at the heart. She could feel Vale, trapped inside. A hollow, singing thing. A new note in the choir. Then she remembered. She crawled, her limbs aching, across the stone floor. Gareth! She reached his body. He was cold. He was not breathing. "Aunt," she whispered, shaking his shoulder. "Warden Gareth. Nothing." He was gone. He had given his spark to break the chain. She looked at him. This stupid, brave, impossible man. He had saved her. He had saved them all, at his own expense. "No," she said, her voice hard. "You cannot do it. You do not get to be the martyr." She looked at her own hands, at the new, raw power thrumming just beneath her skin. She looked at the blood. his blood slowly pooling on the floor from a shrapnel cut, and she looked at her own. "You gave me my freedom, Warden," she whispered. "Let me return the favor." She was wounded, drained, using her blood now, after this fight, might kill her. She did not hesitate. Selene Dracovar, Empress of the Crimson Noctuary, first of her line, took her own elongated fang and sliced open her own wrist. Black, vital, ancient blood welled up. She grabbed the back of Gareth's head, pulled his lifeless face to her, and pressed her bleeding wrist to his cold lips. "You will not leave me," she commanded, her voice breaking. "You agreed. Condition 3. You do not unless I explicitly give permission." She choked back a sob. "I am giving you permission. Gareth Hale, drink." The first sensation was not sound or light. It tasted good. Warmth. Coppery. Electric. And ancient. It tasted of ozone, of deep stone, of ash, and unmistakably of her. It flooded his throat. A river of liquid fire, demanding, commanding. Live. Gareth Hale's body. A cold, empty vessel floating in a silent void. Convulsed. A violent, rattling gasp tore through his chest. His heart, which had been utterly still, hammered against his ribs in a panicked, painful sprint. His nerves, which he had willingly shut down, lit up all at once, a galaxy of pure, unadulterated agony. He coughed, choked on blood, and his eyes flew open. The world was a blurry, red-lit mess. The cavern, the thrumming heart, and her. Selene was slumped over him, her face deathly pale. Her own vitality poured into him. Her black hair, matted with sweat and blood, curtained her face. Her wrist, pressed hard against his mouth, was bleeding freely, the source of his resurrection. She was weaker than he had ever seen her, trembling, on the verge of collapse. "Gareth," she whispered, her voice a dry rasp. Her ember eyes were dim, almost extinguished. He pushed himself to his elbows, the world spinning. His body felt wrong, and incredibly, terribly, alive. His null blood field, his personal void, was still there, but it was thrumming. It had tasted her blood, and her blood, in turn, had touched the void. A circuit had been completed. "What?" He coughed, his voice a gravelly wreck. "What did you do?" She tried to pull her wrist away, but her strength failed her, and she slumped further, almost on top of him. "Condition 3, she panted, a faint, almost hysterical smile touching her lips. "I gave permission for you to drink." He stared at her, the enormity of the exchange settling over him. He had given his life. She had given it back. You realize," Gareth managed, his voice hoarse as he sat up, helping her sit back against a stone. "This is a half-married situation now, isn't it, in vampire law?" Selene looked at him. She actually looked at him, her gaze traveling over his face, as if seeing it for the first time. The faint smile held. "If that were true, you would be the wife." "Yeah, well," he grunted, pushing himself to his feet. His legs were shaking, but they held. Still arguing, he looked around the cavern. The pulsing of the blood heart was slower, deeper, sated. The golden, weeping wound where Vale had been absorbed was already beginning to crystallize, sealing the fanatic inside his new, eternal prison. The crack, that of the battle, was still there. A crack in the world, leaking the faint, raw power of the choir. "We have to get out of here," he said. He looked at her, truly wounded, truly exhausted. The warden in him, the man, took over. He ripped a long strip of cloth from his ruined shirt. "Your shoulder." She did not protest. She let him bind the holy lance wound, his null-field hands providing a small measure of relief as they dampened the lingering consecrated magic. "He's gone," she whispered, looking at the heart. Vale. I can feel him. He is the new note. He is singing, but he is hollow. Good, Gareth said. Let him sing. He finished the knot. Can you walk? I am an empress, she said, though her voice was weak. I will crawl if I must. That's the spirit. He offered her a hand. This time, she took it. They limped, two broken survivors, out of the vault and up the long, spiraling tunnel. When they reached the top, the warden's safe room, the steel containment hatch was still in place, but it was buckled and warped from the heat. Rust, Gareth called out. A burst of static, and then a weak, tinny voice crackled from the wall speaker. Sir, you are not incinerated. This is a statistically joyful outcome. Open the hatch, buddy. The mechanism is fused, sir. The primary structure above it has collapsed. The heat was extreme. Gareth and Celine looked at each other, trapped. But, Rust continued, the fissure, the one from the battle, it has compromised the west wall of this chamber, the one leading to the surface. Gareth shone his light. The AI was right. A huge crack, wide enough for a man, had been torn in the concrete, leading up into packed earth and roots. Well, Gareth grunted, the front door it is. It took them almost an hour, digging, climbing, and pushing. But they emerged, not into the roaring blizzard, but into the quiet, cold light of dawn. The storm had broken. The world was a canvas of pristine, untouched white snow, and clean, blue sky. Except for the cabin, it was gone. Where his house had been, there was now a 20-foot deep, smoking, charred crater. The only thing remaining was the still intact stone chimney, rising like a tombstone from the wreckage, and in the center, the open, steaming maw of the cellar. The trapdoor hatch melted into slag, a direct, open wound into the earth. Sir! Rust crackled from the comm unit Gareth had salvaged from the safe room. My home integrity is now 0%. I have taken the liberty of ordering a new electric kettle. Delivery is pending. Gareth almost laughed. A raw, barking sound. Thanks, Rust. He and Celine stood at the edge of the crater, two small figures in a vast, white wilderness. The battle seemed unreal, but the consequences were already in motion. Rust's speaker came alive again. Sir, my external sensors are now active. The storm is gone. I am picking up a great deal of network traffic. The world is aware. Patch it in, Gareth said. The comm unit, which was supposed to be secure, was now an open channel. The AI began to play audio snippets, news feeds, and encrypted military broadcasts it was intercepting. Massive seismic and energy event, the Ironwood Ridge Quadrant. All contact lost. New Sun Church is refusing comment, but we can confirm High Inquisitor Vale's flagship, the Righteous Hand, has gone silent. Panic in the shadow markets. The No Sanctuary warlords are calling it the Day of Ashes. They are in open war. A rogue broadcast claiming the Empress has returned, claiming she has a new weapon, a Void Walker, a demon that eats magic. Gareth looked at Celine. Void Walker. That's you. Or me. They are not sure which is which. They are both true, she said, her voice stronger. The dawn light, which should have bothered her, seemed to have no effect. The holy lance wound was still angry, but her vitality was returning. The world was on fire. Vale, a pillar of the human supremacist movement, had vanished. His army was broken. The church was headless. The crimson. No Sanctuary was eating itself, and in the middle of it all was this smoking hole in the ground. The vault, Gareth said, his voice low. The heart. It's open. The fissure, the hatch. It's an open wound. He looked at Celine, the warden in him, the man who had spent his life closing doors on monsters, surfaced. We have to seal it. We have to bury it. Concrete. Iron. 1,000 feet of it. Now. Celine walked to the edge of the crater, looking down into the darkness. Can we, little warden? She asked, her voice quiet, reflective. We have to. No. Can we? You felt it. I felt it. The heart is not an evil thing. It is a balance. His imprisonment has calmed the choir. The song is no longer a scream for slaughter. It is just a note, a presence. But the fissure in the wound is leaking. The power is raw, unfiltered. She turned to him. If we bury it as our ancestors did, we do not solve the problem. We just delay it. The pressure will build again. In 100 years, in 1,000, another veil will rise. Another me, another you. The cycle will continue. Gareth slid his empty rifle onto his back. He hated her logic. He hated that she was right. He remembered Ethelberg, the screams, his team. Sealing it just dooms another generation, he whispered, the realization like a physical weight. It just creates another Eclipse 9. Yes, Celine nodded. So, we cannot bury it, but we cannot leave it. A raw, open heart. It will draw everyone, the church, to try and reclaim it. My warlords, to try and drink it. They will tear the world apart to get to it. She looked south. And I must go. I must return to my court, or what is left of it. Return, Gareth was stunned. After all this, you want to go back to the throne. Want, she laughed, a cold, bitter sound. There is no want, Gareth. There is only what I must do. My warlords, the ones who sold me, are using the truth we found. They are telling the kindred that humans created us, that we are your property, that I was a fool for seeking peace. They are twisting it into a holy war of enslavement. If I do not return, if I do not show them what true power looks like, a warlord far worse than I ever was will take my throne, and he will justify a genocide. They were at an impasse. Two impossible choices. So, that's it, Gareth said, kicking a piece of charred wood. You go to war, and I would go back into hiding. They call me a void walker. Celine. Hiding is no longer an option. No, she agreed softly. It is not. A new sound. A high-pitched whine. Not magical. Mechanical. Gareth had Celine behind the remains of the chimney in a second. His rifle up, before he realized it was empty. Wait, he muttered. I know that sound. A large, black, modified cargo drone, the size of a small car, crested the ridge, its rotors whirring. It was followed by a rugged, six-wheeled, all-terrain vehicle, its engine roaring in the thin air. They stopped 100 yards away. Pilgrim, a familiar, sharp voice called out over a loudspeaker. You look like hell and you've ruined the lawn. Gareth lowered his rifle, a slow breath of relief escaping him. Mira. The ATV's doors opened. Mira, his old hacker contact from offline city, stepped out. She was a short, wiry woman in heavy winter gear, her face covered in Augs and data goggles. She was not alone. With her were three others. A tall, massively muscled man with a thick beard and wild, yellow eyes, who sniffed the air like a wolf. A young woman in the blue robes of a renegade magister, her hands flickering with a faint, blue light. And a fourth figure, pale and hooded, who stayed in the shadow of the vehicle, pointedly avoiding the morning sun. You brought a party, Gareth shouted, walking into the open. Celine was right behind him, her hand on his arm, a silent show of unity that did not go unnoticed. Mira and her team stopped cold, their eyes fixed on Celine. By the source, the young mage whispered. It's true. Gareth, Mira said, her voice all business, ignoring the supernatural entourage for a moment. The world is tearing itself apart. The church is headless. The sanctuary is eating itself. And every major faction is looking for one thing, you two. And this hole, she pointed at the crater. We represent a new faction, said the big man, his voice a low rumble. Lycus, of the Free Packs. The old dominion is broken. The choir's scream is gone. We are free, and we are terrified. The magical ley lines are raw. The young mage, Alara, added. The choir is no longer a force of pure rage. Its potential. But it is uncontrolled. The old covens, the church, they want to chain it. My sire the warlords, the hooded vampire. Kale spoke, his voice like rustling leaves. They use your name, Empress. They use it to justify slaughter. They are twisting the truth. They say humans are our creators, and thus, our property. Mira stepped forward. They are all the old guard, church, empire, coven. They want the old power back. But us, the progressive factions, the renegade mages, the free packs, the human survivalists, we are tired of it. We want a new deal, a new Crimson Sun Accords, one that is not based on fear. She looked at Gareth. But they are all looking at this. They are terrified of this hole. Pilgrim. They are scared of what you unleashed. They sent us to find out what the play was. Are you two going to burn the world? Or are you going to help us save it? All eyes fell on Gareth. He looked at Mira, at the wolf, the mage, the vampire. He looked at Celine, and he eyed the smoking crater that had been his home. The warden in him, the man who had sought solitude, screamed, "Close the door. Tell them. Seal it. Run." He remembered Ethelberg. He remembered the cold, logical voice in his head. He remembered Vale's ecstatic face. "No," Gareth said, his voice clear and steady in the cold morning air. Mira frowned. "No." "What?" "No. We are not sealing it." He walked to the edge of the crater. "That's the problem. We keep closing the door. The church wanted to own it. The old ones wanted to bury it. They both kept it a secret. And that secrecy is what gave it power. It is what let Vale fester." He turned, his gaze hard, his null blood presence a tangible thing in the air, making the mage flinch and the wolf whine. "What if we do not own it, and we do not bury it? What if we manage it?" Celine stepped up beside him, her hand no longer on his arm, but at his side. "A new center," she said, understanding. "A new kind of power," Gareth nodded. "Not a throne, not a cross, a negotiation table. This is the new nexus. The heart is the anchor. We do not let one faction control it. We all guard it. Together, humans, vampires, lycanthropes, mages." He looked at Mira, at Lycus, at Alara, at Kale. "We use its presence as the one thing that binds us. The mutual threat, the mutual responsibility that forces a new accords. One based on transparency, one based on this shared secret." Mira was stunned. The others looked hopeful. "A third option," Lycus rumbled. "A place where all packs come to talk." "A neutral ground," Alara whispered. "Where magic is studied, not weaponized." "But who?" Mira asked. "Who guards it? Who holds the keys?" She looked back and forth between them. The void. And the song. Gareth sighed. He looked at the ruin of his cabin, his dream of solitude. Now, just a pile of ash. "It seems I am not retired after all." He was the anchor, the null blood, the only one who could touch the heart without being corrupted. His home was now the most important political spot on earth. Celine placed her hand on the stone chimney, the only thing left standing. "And I cannot be the empress of an old throne. My duty is here. I am the voice, the song, the only one who can translate its language." They were the new balance. Later. Much later. The Allies had set up a perimeter, a temporary camp. Mira's drone had delivered coffee, blankets, and a new comm system. Gareth and Celine stood by the chimney, drinking hot, synthetic coffee from thermal mugs. Rust, now downloaded into Mira's secure server, spoke from Gareth's new handheld. "Sir, my inventory lists are now complex. I am showing guests, and a large hole. I must protest this new decor." "Get used to it, buddy," Gareth said, taking a sip. Celine was quiet, watching the makeshift camp. "You have bound me, Gareth Hale," she said softly. "Not with silver, but with this responsibility." He looked at her. The morning light was soft on her pale skin. The anger, the fear, the royal arrogance was gone, replaced by a weary, profound strength. "Well," he said, a small smile touching his lips. "You did force-feed me your blood. I'm pretty sure in vampire law that makes us half-married." She turned her head, her ember eyes meeting his. A single, elegant eyebrow arched. "If that were true, human, I would be the one who asked. You were unconscious. I believe that would make you the wife." Gareth let out a short laugh. "Yeah, well, still arguing." He looked out at the new world, at the smoking crater, at the woman beside him. It was not love. It was not peace. It was recognition. They were two survivors who had seen the absolute worst parts of each other. The void. And the monster. And they were both still standing. "So," he said, taking another sip, "who do you think made the first move, you knocking or me opening the door?" Celine looked at him, and for the first time, she smiled. A genuine, if faint, smile. "Shut up, Aunt." The Nexus was 3 weeks old, and it was already a mess. What had been a smoking crater, centered on a ruined chimney, was now the most chaotic construction site on the continent. Mira's high-speed cargo drones zipped overhead like angry hornets, dropping prefab modules, shielded comms equipment, and, much to Gareth's annoyance, pallets of high-energy protein bars that tasted like strawberry-flavored chalk. Lycus and his free packs had secured the perimeter, their lupine senses acting as a far better alarm system than any technology. Alara, the young renegade magister, was painstakingly attempting to map the ley lines that were now raw and exposed, her hands constantly flickering with the blue light of her craft. Kyle, the hooded vampire renegade, had organized a small, shadowed contingent of other no-sanctuary outcasts, working through the twilight hours to reinforce the tunnels beneath the earth. And at the center of it all stood Gareth and Celine. They were the new axis of the world, the void and the song, the ant and the Empress, the target. The world was holding its breath. Vale's disappearance had left a power vacuum in the new Sun Church that was rapidly being filled by paranoia, infighting, and accusations of heresy. The Crimson Noctuary was in full-blown civil war, with a dozen warlords claiming Celine was either a church puppet or a divine monster, using her name to justify a bloody campaign against humans. The smoking hole in the ground had become the focal point for every fear and ambition on the planet. Gareth was drinking a cup of brutally strong, recycled coffee when the new council approached him. Mira, Lycus, Alara, and Kale. They looked worried. "She's stable, Pilgrim," Mira said, not bothering with pleasantries. She held up a data slate showing a dozen complex, fluctuating graphs. "The heart, since Vale got eaten, the choir has quieted down. The baseline psychic static is almost peaceful. Alara says the song is just a hum now, not a scream." "But," Lycus rumbled, his yellow eyes fixed on Gareth, "the calm has the other packs spooked. They are gathering. The warlords are gathering. The church is repositioning." "They are afraid," Alara added, her voice soft. "They are afraid of this, of the power. And forgive me, they are afraid of you. Both of you. Gareth raised an eyebrow. We are the ones holding it together. Exactly, Cale said from the shadows. You hold it together. But what holds you, Nullblood, drank her blood. She, Empress, was brought back from the brink by your void. You are entangled. The factions need to know that this connection has not created a new monster, a new master. Gareth understood. It was trust. The one commodity they did not have. They think we are compromised, he said flatly. That the choir is secretly pulling our strings. Or that I am, or that she is. They need assurance, Mira said. We need an audit. A full, deep spectrum analysis. They need to know that when you speak, it is you speaking. And when she speaks, it is her. Celine, who had been standing by the chimney, now just a monument, walked over. Her movements were different now, less of the gliding, arrogant power of an empress, and more of the deliberate, grounded presence of a guardian. She wore modern, tactical gear, not robes. They wish to test us, she said. A ritual, Alara corrected, of transparency. We must see the bond, the moment of your exchange. We must see what it created. Gareth looked at Celine. His entire life, he had run from what he was. His instinct was to tell them to go to hell, but he was no longer a retiree. He nodded. Fine, let's get it over with. But if you try to plant a loyalty spell in my head, Alara, I will know. I would not dare, she whispered, her respect for his power genuine. They descended, not as enemies, not as prisoners, but as a reluctant team. The vault was no longer dark. Mira had rigged strings of cold, high-intensity LED lights, illuminating the vast cavern. The blood heart pulsed its new, slow, calm rhythm, thump-thump. The golden, crystalline scar where Vale was imprisoned was the only part of it that seemed unwholesome, a tumor of righteousness on an ancient, natural force. Here, Alara said, indicating the center of the mosaic, where they had fought Vale. The connection is strongest here. Gareth and Celine stood in the circle. Mira set up a perimeter of scanners, their green beams mapping every biological process. This is not a containment spell, Alara explained, her hands beginning to glow with a soft, steady light. This is a ritual of truth. I'm no psychic, Gareth. I am a magician. I read the flow of power. I am going to trace the moment your null blood, your void, ingested her blood, her choir, and I will trace the moment her blood entered your empty vessel and restarted your life. Gareth braced himself. Do it. Alara placed a hand on his forehead and her other hand on Celine's. She closed her eyes and began to chant, a complex, flowing river of an ancient language. Mira watched her data slate. His biosigns are flat, normal. Hers are off the charts. Alara, you are in. The young mage's face was pale with concentration. I can see the exchange, the blood. It is beautiful. A perfect loop. But I cannot read him. Celine, your mind is open. A library. But Gareth, she frowned. His mind is not the null field. It is locked. It is an ancient, impossible construct. The defenses are layered, and they are his own. Gareth frowned. What are you talking about? The locks are not magical. They are psychic, structural, and they are sealed from a time before, Alara gasped, pulling her hand away from him, as if burned. I cannot open it. It is too old. Celine looked at Gareth, not with suspicion, but with a dawning, intense curiosity. Gareth, she said, her voice low, you are not just a null blood. You are something else. I am just me, he said. No. She stepped closer. You are not. I have wondered. Your will, your refusal. It is not human stubbornness. It is older. Let me try. Try what? You and I are connected. You said it yourself. Half married. She took his hand. It was not a romantic gesture. It was a clinical one. I will not use Alara's magic. I will use the blood. Before he could react, she pressed her hand to his and pushed. Not with magic, but with the resonance of the pale choir that now lived in them both. She did not pick the lock. She was the key. He felt a click, a sound, not in his ears, but in the deepest part of his soul. A sound like a vault door, a mile thick, swinging open on silent, ancient hinges, and the memories returned. Gareth Hale did not just collapse. He disappeared from the present. He was standing on a mountain of black stone. The sky was a sickly green, choked with the smoke of things. He was tall, clad in bronze and fur, and he was holding a spear that was not a weapon, but a focus. Around him, his village burned, but it was not torches that burned it. It was the Titans, vast, chaotic, swirling shapes of shadow and madness, plucked from the umbral realm in a long, forgotten war. They were creatures of pure, primal magic, and the humans, with their failing shamans and bronze swords, were being exterminated. The man who was not yet Gareth was different. He was empty. The null blood, the curse. Magic slid off him. He could not be healed. He could not be blessed. He was an outcast. But as he watched the Titans ignore him, their spells unraveling as they passed over his skin, he had an idea. A terrible, brilliant, human idea. If magic could not fight magic, what if nothing could? He went to the high cavern, the nexus, the place where the ley lines met. He stood in the center, and he did not cast a spell. He did the opposite. He pushed, with his will, creating a perfect vacuum of power, a void in the world. And something answered, a pool of sentient darkness, a consciousness that was not a Titan, that was not a god. It was the choir, raw, unformed. It was drawn to the vacuum he had created. It did not speak. It resonated. It offered a bargain. It would fight the Titans, but it needed vessels. And then the vision shifted. He was not alone. A woman stood with him, a warrior, his first lieutenant. He is the most trusted. Her hair was as black as his was light. Her eyes were not embers, but a fierce, clear blue. She was Celine. Before. The first donor explained the pact. We cannot win. There are too many. They are too much. But this thing, this shadow, it can, but it needs a sword. It needs us to become the shadow to fight the shadow. The warrior woman looked at the burning world, and at him. She did not flinch. I will be the first, she said. For our people. I will be your sword. He cut his own hand. The first donor. He bled into the earth. The shadow tasted his blood, his void. And then he looked at her. She knelt. He gave her blood. A pact. She drank. He watched as she was transformed, as the power of the choir, the shadow of the heart, poured into her. She was reborn, the first vampire, the first Empress, because she was the first to step into the darkness for humanity. The vision burned, accelerating. They won. The Titans were relegated, torn apart by their new weapons. Humanity was saved. But the cost. The choir was not silent. It began to sing, a song of hunger, of power, of dominance. It infected the new vampires. It whispered to the humans. The war had never ended. It had just changed its name. And the first donor saw what he had done. He had saved the world, only to doom it to a new cycle of violence. He took her, his first sword, now his first Empress, back to the cavern. He used his null blood power, not as a weapon, but as a lock. He and she worked together, binding the heart of the choir, creating the containment vault. She had to leave, to guide her new, hungry people. He had to stay, but the guilt and the responsibility was too much. He made one last choice. He stood before the heart, and he used his power on himself. He sealed his own memories. He locked himself away. "I must forget," his ancient voice whispered. "The burden is too great. I will rest. I will be human, until the cycle turns, until I am needed again." He walked out of the cavern, a man with no past, and began a new life, a life that would end and begin and end again, a cycle of reincarnation, a hero, a soldier, a warden, a man always drawn to the fight, always feeling a flicker of that old power, that null-blood curse, always ending in tragedy. Ethelberg, always running. Until now. The vision shattered. Gareth was on his hands and knees in the cavern, gasping, the weight of 10,000 years of memory crashing down on him. Alara and Mira were staring, pale and shaking, having witnessed it all. Celine was on her knees opposite him. Tears, thick and black, were streaking her face. She was not crying from sadness. She was remembering. "It was you," she whispered, her voice broken. "It was always you. In every lifetime I felt a pull, an emptiness in the world, a missing piece. I thought it was the choir, but it was you. You left me." Gareth looked up, his own eyes burning. The guilt was suffocating. "I did this," he gasped. "I am the one. I am the monster. Celine, I made you this. I started this entire damned war. I turned on the switch." He expected her to rage, to curse him. Instead, she crawled across the stone and grabbed his face, her fingers pressing hard into his skin. "You idiot," she hissed, her ember eyes burning with a fierce, sudden clarity. "You did not do this to me. We chose this. I chose it. You chose. We were trying to save them. We were trying to save humanity." She shook him. You ran. You locked it all away. You left me to be the monster, while you got to play the hero, over and over, and then you got to forget. You got to rest." Her rage faded, replaced by a shuddering realization. "And this time we both woke up. You, the null blood, and me, the first blood. We were meant to be the balance, and you hid." Gareth stared at her, the truth of her words cutting deeper than any blade. He was the first donor. He was the man who had unleashed the vampires on the world. A desperate, terrible, human choice. And he had spent 10,000 years running from the bill. And now, it was due. He looked at his hands. The hands of a warden, the hands of a man who just wanted coffee, the hands of the first donor. Humanity. His humanity. They had dared to play with fire. They had dared to create a nightmare weapon. And now, it was humanity's job to fix it, not to destroy it, not to imprison it, but to guide it, to self-correct. He was the man who had turned the switch on. He was the only one who could turn it down. "No more running," he whispered. He stood up. He was not Gareth Hale, the retiree. He was not Gareth Hale, the warden. He was Gareth, the first, and the last. He accepted it, all of it. The guilt, the power, the responsibility. Celine stood with him. The look in her eyes had changed. The memory of her human choice and her human sacrifice had redefined her. She was not an empress, a title of power. She was a guardian, a title of duty. She was the guardian of the shadow. Gareth turned to Mira, Alara, and Lycus, who looked like they had just seen the birth of a galaxy. "You wanted to know who holds the keys," Gareth said, his voice calm, resonant, and absolute. "The answer is we all do. This nexus is not a prison. It is a research center, A diplomatic station. The choir is not evil. It is raw power. We humanity shaped it once with fear. Now we will shape it with knowledge. He looked at Celine. She is the guardian. She can hear the song. She can translate. He looked at his own hands. And I am soundproofing. I can create the silence we need to work, to heal, to upgrade, not just to destroy. The world did not get better overnight. The warlords still raged. The church still plotted. But the nexus, the smoking ruin of Gareth's cabin, became the new fulcrum. The one place of true neutrality, guarded by the two beings who had started it all. Months later, the nexus was a sprawling, strange and beautiful place of hard tech, ancient stone, and repurposed warden prefabs. And at its heart, built around the original stone chimney, was a new cabin. It had a reinforced roof, a comm station, and a fireplace. Gareth stood at the window, looking out at the falling snow, a mug of real, non-synthetic coffee in his hands. "Sir," Rust's voice, now from a sleek, wall-mounted speaker, said calmly, "The Free Pax delegation has arrived, and the emissary from the Crimson No Sanctuary is complaining about the lack of blood servants." Gareth took a sip. "Tell the emissary we have universal donors in the fridge, bagged, and tell Lycus I will be there in 5 minutes." Celine walked up behind him. She was not in armor, not rags. She was in a simple, dark sweater and jeans. She looked human, almost. She put her hand on his shoulder. Gareth sighed, leaning into the touch. "You know, I still just want to sit down and have a quiet cup of coffee." Celine leaned her head against his shoulder. Her ember eyes were calm, steady, and filled with an ancient, weary affection. "You chose the wrong person to fall in love with, Gareth Hale," she whispered. He looked at her, at the woman who had been his first sword, his greatest burden, and his final salvation. A small smile touched his lips. "Yeah, well." He took another sip of coffee. Still arguing, and in the heart of the new world, surrounded by the dangers they had created, they were, for the first time in 10,000 years, finally at peace.